The order no one wanted to hear. The ground shook under their boots as Captain Ryan Hale and his team moved through the burning streets. The alien city was nothing but ruins now, with black smoke rising into the red sky. Everywhere, shattered walls and broken machines lay scattered, and the sound of distant explosions echoed through the air. The evacuation timer was running, and the dropships would leave in less than 15 minutes. Ryan's orders were clear: get all human survivors out before the enemy closed in. But as he stepped over a collapsed beam, he saw something small move in the corner of his eye. He stopped, holding up his fist for the squad to halt. There, under a half-destroyed structure, a pair of glowing blue eyes looked back at him, wide and terrified. It was a child, not human, but alien. Skin pale and dust-covered, hair tangled. With bits of rubble, she was shivering, clutching a broken piece of metal like it was her only weapon. "Sir?" Sergeant Davis asked, following his gaze. Ryan crouched down slowly, lowering his rifle so he didn't scare her. "It's just a kid," he said quietly. The girl's lips moved, whispering something in a language he didn't understand. Her voice trembled like the wind through shattered glass. Then Ryan's earpiece crackled. "Captain Hale," came the voice of Fleet Command. Cold and sharp. "Leave all non-human survivors. Prioritize human extraction." That is a direct order. Ryan froze, his eyes still locked on the girl's. Her small hands tightened on the metal shard, but her eyes begged for help. "Command, say again," Ryan replied. "You heard me." The voice snapped. "Leave the alien. It's not our responsibility." Davis shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, we're wasting time." The dropships shut it. Ryan cut him off, his jaw clenched, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. He knew the rule: no alien rescues. No exceptions. But this wasn't a soldier or an enemy spy. This was a frightened child sitting in the middle of hell. Another explosion shook the ground, closer this time. Dust rained down from the broken walls. The girl flinched, curling into herself. Ryan took a deep breath, stepped forward, and crouched low so he was at her eye level. "It's okay," he said slowly, pointing to himself. "I'm friend." She didn't move, but her breathing slowed. Her eyes darted to the burning street behind him, then back to his face. For a moment, he thought she might bolt deeper into the ruins. The earpiece crackled again. "Captain Hale, confirm. Extraction of all human survivors and return immediately." Ryan pressed his come button. "Negative," he said, his voice firm. "I'm bringing her with me. Captain, you are disobeying a direct order." The voice barked. Ryan ignored it, slinging his rifle over his shoulder and stepping into the rubble. He reached out his hand slowly. The girl hesitated. Then, as another explosion thundered nearby, she grabbed his hand with surprising strength. He pulled her out from the wreckage and lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected. Trembling against his chest, "Sir, this is going to get us court-martialed," Davis muttered, but he followed, covering their rear. "Then I'll see you in court," Ryan replied, pushing forward through the ruined street. Enemy drones buzzed overhead, scanning for movement. Ryan ducked into an alley, heart pounding. The girl buried her face in his shoulder, her small fingers gripping the fabric of his armor. "Overcomes." Command kept shouting for him to return without the alien. He switched the channel off. When they reached the main street, the dropship was visible, engines glowing. Ramp open. The pilot waved him in, but as soon as he saw the child's face changed. "Not on my ship," the pilot shouted. "Orders from Fleet, no aliens aboard." Ryan didn't slow down. "Then shoot me, because she's getting on," he growled, walking up the ramp. The pilots stepped back, muttering a curse, and sealed the hatch behind them as the dropship lifted off. Ryan glanced out the window. The alien city shrank below, fires burning everywhere. The girl peeked up at him with those bright blue eyes. She didn't understand his language, but she seemed to know one thing: he wasn't going to leave her behind. What Ryan didn't know was that saving this child had just made him an enemy. Of his own people, the chase begins. The dropship shook as it broke through the planet's thin atmosphere. The sound of gunfire and distant explosions fading into the hum of the engines. Captain Ryan Hale sat on the bench seat, the alien child still in his arms, her head resting against his chest. She was quiet, but he could feel her rapid heartbeat. Through her small frame, Sergeant Davis sat across from him, watching with a mix of worry and disbelief. "You know this isn't over, sir," Davis finally said, his voice low so the others wouldn't hear. "They'll have your badge for this." Maybe worse, Ryan didn't answer right away. His eyes locked on the dropship's floor. He knew Davis was right. This wasn't just disobeying an order. This was openly defying Fleet Command in the middle of a war zone, the CUM system. In the cockpit came alive, Dropship 07. "This is Fleet Command." The voice was hard. "Cold, Captain Hale. You are carrying unauthorized cargo. Turn back and leave it on the surface, or you will be relieved of duty immediately." Ryan didn't even look toward the cockpit. The pilot's voice came back shaky. Command, be advised, Captain Hale is armed," and Ryan cut him off, speaking into his wrist. "Mike, command, I suggest you clear the landing bay. We're coming in." Silence, then static. But Ryan knew this silence was worse than threats. It meant they were already deciding how to deal with him. Minutes later, the dropship entered the hangar bay of the main fleet carrier, Resolute. The landing struts touched down with a metallic clang. Ryan stood, motioning for Davis to stay behind him. The child clung to his neck, her blue eyes darting nervously to the soldiers lining the hangar floor. They weren't there to welcome him. Back, they were there to stop him. The ramp lowered slowly, and Ryan stepped down into the cold light of the hangar. A security officer with a stiff posture and a stun rifle approached. "Captain Hale, you are ordered to surrender the alien." The officer said flatly, "No." Ryan replied without slowing his pace. "You are in violation of," the officer began. But Ryan shifted the child in one arm and unhooked his sidearm with the other. "I don't think you understand," Ryan said, voice low and controlled. "She stays with me." The officer's eyes flickered, his grip on the stun rifle tightening for a tense moment. It seemed like someone might fire, but then, from the back of the hangar, Admiral Strickland walked forward, his face unreadable. "Captain Hale," Strickland said, his voice carrying through the bay. "Follow me." Now, Ryan followed, still holding the child. Through the steel corridors of the carrier, every step echoed with the weight of what he had just done. Finally, they entered a small conference room. No windows, just cold walls and a single table. "Put her in the corner," Strickland said, gesturing at the girl. Ryan ignored the order and stayed standing. The Admiral sighed. "You think you're a hero, Hale? You just compromised an entire mission for one alien kid. She's not a target. She's not an enemy. She's a child," Ryan said, his voice like stone. "You don't know what she is." Strickland shot back, leaning forward. "You have no idea the danger you might have just brought aboard." Ryan narrowed his eyes. "I know exactly what I saw," he said. "And what I saw was a scared kid trapped under rubble while everyone else ran." Strickland's jaw tightened. "You're confined to quarters until further notice. Security will take the alien to holding 4. Examination." The girl must have sensed the threat in his tone, because she buried her face in Ryan's chest. Ryan's pulse spiked. "No," he said simply. And that was it, the breaking point. Strickland stepped back, gesturing to the guards at the door. "Take them both," he ordered. The guards moved forward, stun rifles raised. Ryan didn't think he acted. In one motion, he dropped to a crouch, rolled behind the table, and pulled a smoke grenade from his belt. The hiss filled the room as thick gray smoke spread. Shouts erupted, boots thundering on the floor. Holding the child tight, Ryan slipped out through a side maintenance hatch he had noticed earlier. The corridor beyond was narrow and unlit, perfect for losing anyone chasing them. He ran. The girl's small arms locked around his neck. Behind him, alarms blared. Unauthorized movement detected over the ship's intercom. Strickland's voice thundered, "Seal all hangar bays. Captain Hale is in violation of fleet security." Ryan knew there was no going back now. They'd brand him a traitor before they'd admit their own orders were wrong. He had one option left: get her off this ship before they both disappeared into some classified file no one ever saw again. The maintenance tunnel ended near the auxiliary hangar, mostly used for shuttles and repair craft. Ryan peeked around the corner, 2 mechanics. No guards yet. He moved fast, stepping into the hangar like he belonged there. One mechanic frowned. "Captain, you're not scheduled. New orders." Ryan cut him off, not slowing, heading. For a small shuttle at the far end, he strapped the girl into the co-pilot seat as he powered the engines. Her blue eyes met his, still frightened. "It's okay," he said softly. "We're leaving." The hangar door began to close. Someone had realized where he was. Ryan gritted his teeth. Slammed the throttle forward, the shuttle shot through the shrinking gap into the darkness of space, but almost instantly, his radar lit up red. 2 fleet interceptors had already locked onto him, and Command's voice came over the comms. "Captain Hale, surrender now, or you will be destroyed." No safe place. The shuttle's controls vibrated under Ryan's hands as the engines strained at full burn. Outside the viewport, the cold darkness of space was broken by the steady flash of the 2 interceptors chasing him. Their weapons charged. The alien child, still strapped into the co-pilot seat, stared wide-eyed at the streaks of light flying past. Her small fingers clutching the seatbelt until her knuckles turned pale. Ryan's cum crackled again. The cold, commanding voice of Fleet Command filling the cabin. "Captain Hale, power down immediately. You have one chance. Failure to comply will result in your termination." He muted the channel without answering, his jaw tight. They weren't interested in negotiation, only control. The interceptors closed in, positioning themselves to box him in on both sides. Ryan checked the scanner. No friendly stations, no neutral colonies within immediate jump range. They were in open space, where anyone could vanish without leaving a trace. He glanced at the girl, who was watching him instead of the view outside. Her eyes weren't just afraid, they were trusting, as if she believed he could somehow get them both through this. He took a sharp breath. "Hold on," he told her, flipping several switches. The shuttle banked hard, engines roaring, skimming dangerously close to a drifting cargo hauler. The interceptors followed, their pilots clearly trained for pursuit. Ryan wasn't going to outrun them in speed, but maybe. In cunning, he pulled the shuttle toward the shadow of a nearby asteroid field. One of the interceptors fired a warning shot, a bright beam flashing past their nose. The girl flinched and ducked her head. Ryan gritted his teeth, weaving between the jagged rocks. The field was dense, stable, a graveyard for pilots without precision. The interceptors hesitated for a split second before following him in. Ryan used that hesitation, swinging the shuttle around one large asteroid and cutting power for a moment. The ship drifted silently. Hiding behind the rock, he listened. The radar ping showed the interceptors splitting up, scanning the field. When one passed directly in front of them, Ryan reignited the engines and darted out, scraping so close to the rock that the hull groaned. He was out of their sensor range for now. The shuttle's alarms beeped softly. Oxygen levels weren't critical yet. But the fuel reserves were lower than he liked. Running forever wasn't an option. He needed somewhere to land, somewhere Command wouldn't risk sending a retrieval team. A blinking green light caught his attention on the console. It was the girl's pendant, still glowing faintly. Reacting to something, Ryan frowned. He hadn't touched it. But the ship's navigation computer started picking up faint coordinates. Coordinates not in the human fleet database. The girl noticed him looking. Home, she said, in broken English, pointing to the blinking light. Ryan stared at her. She was guiding him to her people. But if he followed those coordinates, the fleet would brand him not just a deserter, but a traitor aiding an alien race. The girl's voice trembled as she spoke again. Safe. For me? For you too. Ryan hesitated only for a heartbeat before locking the course. The shuttle turned toward the unmarked sector, engines humming. As they slipped out of the asteroid field, for a while, there was only silence, the stars sliding past, the hum of the engine steady. Ryan took a deep breath, letting his hands rest on the controls. The girl was watching him again, tilting, her head as if studying him. You? Why help? She asked slowly, her accent thick. He didn't look at her when he answered, because no one else would. She seemed to think about that for a moment before whispering something in her own language. Ryan didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone, gratitude. It made something in his chest tighten. That quiet moment shattered when a loud warning alarm blared. Ryan checked the scanner. 2 new blips had appeared, closing in fast. They weren't human. Interceptors this time. They were alien ships, small, agile hunters with sharp, curved designs. The girl gasped, fear flashing in her eyes. Not my people. Bad, she said, shaking her head. Ryan cursed under his breath, pushing the shuttle into a hard turn. The hunters fired a volley of plasma bolts streaking past. One grazing the shuttle's wing. The ship jolted violently, sparks raining from the ceiling. Ryan fought the controls, forcing the shuttle into a spin that sent them between 2 massive asteroids. The alien hunters followed, faster than the human interceptors had been. Whoever they were, they wanted the girl alive or the pendant she carried. As Ryan ducked and weaved through the rocks, the girl pulled the pendant from around her neck. She pressed it into his hand, her voice urgent. If they get? I'll end, she said. Ryan didn't understand all of it, but the fear in her voice told him enough. This pendant was the reason she'd been left behind in the first place. And now, the reason he was being hunted. A sharp blast shook the shuttle. Again, alarms wailing. Ryan's grip tightened on the controls, his mind racing. No safe place in the fleet. No safe place in open space. If these hunters were her enemies, then maybe. The only hope was to reach her homeworld before either humans or these aliens caught them. He slammed the throttle forward, eyes fixed on the mysterious coordinates blinking on his nav display. The girl leaned closer to him, her small voice barely audible over the alarms. You. My only hope. Ryan didn't answer, but he knew she was right. The escape plan the shuttle rattled as it pushed past its safe limits. The blinking coordinates on the navigation panel were pulling them toward a patch of uncharted space, but the alien hunters were still behind them. Slicing through the void with terrifying speed, Ryan's knuckles were white on the controls, his eyes flicking between the nav screen and the shrinking distance to their pursuers. He knew they couldn't keep running like this. The shuttle was a short-range craft, not built for prolonged chases or heavy combat. Fuel levels were dropping, and the oxygen meter was already dipping toward yellow. He needed help, not from the fleet, not from any official channel. They'd either arrest him or take the girl away. He needed someone who didn't ask questions. Someone who owed him. Ryan's mind went to one name. Tarek Voss. A smuggler, a thief, and a man with more enemies than friends. Ryan had saved his life years ago during a pirate skirmish. If Tarek was still alive and still flying, he might be crazy enough to help. He flipped the COM switch to an encrypted frequency. This is Hale. Tarek, if you're out there, I need a pickup. Now, The channel stayed silent for a long moment. Then a gravelly voice came back. Well, well. Captain Hale, last I heard, you were the fleet's golden boy. What happened? Steal something shiny. Ryan glanced at the girl in the co-pilot seat. Something like that. And I've got people chasing me who want it badly. There was a pause. Then Tarek's voice lowered. Send me your location. I'll meet you at grid K27. But if you bring the law to my doorstep, you're on your own. Ryan adjusted course, heading for the rendezvous point. The alien hunters followed, refusing to be shaken. He pushed the shuttle through a narrow gap between two spinning asteroids. Scraping the hull as sparks showered across the cockpit, the girl clung to the seat, her blue eyes wide but silent. Ryan glanced at her. You holding up? She gave a small nod, though her hands trembled. Her voice came out soft. They will not stop. That much was clear. Ryan's only hope was that Tarek had something faster, stronger, something that could lose these hunters for good. They reached grid K27. A lonely stretch of space, marked only by a derelict mining platform drifting in the darkness. The platform was barely holding together. Chunks of metal floated around it, and its lights flickered weakly. Ryan slowed the shuttle, scanning for any sign of Tarek. Then, from behind the mining platform, a bulky freighter emerged, patched together from different ship parts, its hull covered in burn marks and dents. A familiar voice came over the comm. Dock in Bay 3, and hurry, your friends are close. Ryan brought the shuttle into the bay, metal clamps locking it in place the moment the hatch opened. Tarek was there, tall, broad-shouldered, with a long coat and a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Well, you look terrible, Tarek said. Ryan stepped out with the girl in his arms. She stays with me, Ryan said. Before Tarek could make any assumptions, Tarek raised an eyebrow. You're running from someone for her. Must be a hell of a story. Before Ryan could answer, an alarm blared across the freighter. Incoming ships, 2 hostile contacts. Ryan didn't waste time. They followed us. We need to move now. Tarek swore under his breath, but motioned them toward the bridge. The freighter's engines roared to life, pulling away from the mining platform just as plasma fire lit up the space they'd been in seconds ago. On the bridge, Ryan strapped the girl into a seat beside him. Tarek took the controls, weaving through the floating debris of the mining sector. These aren't pirates, Tarek said, glancing at the hunters on the scanner. No, Ryan replied. They're after her. And whatever this is, he held up the glowing pendant. Tarek's eyes widened slightly. Do you have any idea what that is? Ryan shook his head. I just know they'll kill her to get it. Tarek pushed the freighter into a tight spin, dodging incoming fire. I can take us to the drift market, he said. It's neutral territory. If we get there, they can't touch us without starting a war. Ryan hesitated. Neutral territory doesn't mean safe. Tarek smirked. No, but it's the only place in this sector where you can disappear if you have enough credits. The girl tugged on Ryan's sleeve. Her voice was barely a whisper. They, no pendant, will end war. Ryan turned sharply to her. What war? But she looked away, clutching her knees. Ryan knew she wasn't ready to tell him. Not yet. The hunters grew bolder, flying dangerously close to the freighter, their weapons locking on. Tarek cursed. They're not letting go. I've got one trick left. He flipped a series of switches, and the ship's rear cargo bay blew open, spilling hundreds of chunks of raw ore into space. The hunters swerved, their shields flaring as the heavy debris struck them. One managed to dodge, the other spun out, vanishing into the black. That's one down, Tarek said. But the other's still on us. Ryan's gaze hardened. Then we take him out before we reach the drift. The freighter dove into a dense asteroid cluster, the last hunter weaving behind them. Ryan manned the dorsal turret, the child watching from the bridge as he swung the heavy cannon toward the hunter. The moment it cleared the asteroid edge, Ryan fired a blinding burst that tore through its shields and sent it spinning away in flames. The bridge was silent. Except for the hum of the engines, Tarek leaned back, smirking. "Well, Captain, looks like you bought yourself some breathing room." Ryan glanced at the girl, but deep down, he knew this was far from over. The fleet still wanted them. The hunters would regroup. And whatever secret the pendant held was only growing more dangerous by the second. And now they were heading straight for the drift market, a place where allies and enemies looked the same until it was too late. The hidden truth, the drift market, floated like a wounded beast in the middle of nowhere, an enormous station built from the wreckage of a dozen different ships and colonies. Its jagged exterior was covered in neon lights that flickered in strange patterns, and hundreds of ships, from rusted freighters to sleek luxury yachts, drifted lazily around it. Here, there was no law, only deals, debts, and the unspoken rule that if you wanted to live, you kept your eyes on your own business. Ryan stood by the freighter's viewport as Tarek guided them into the docking ring, the alien child. Leora, he had finally learned her name during the journey, stayed close to his side. Her small hand gripping his sleeve, her glowing pendant hung against her chest, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. "You sure about this?" Orion asked, without looking at Tarek, not even slightly. Tarek replied with a grin, "But in the drift, you can disappear if you pay the right people. Problem is, sometimes the right people sell you to the highest bidder 5 minutes later." Ryan gave a quiet, humorless chuckle, comforting. The docking clamps locked with a metallic clank, and the freighter's ramp lowered into the dim, crowded chaos of the market. The air smelled of oil, spices, and smoke. Merchants shouted in a dozen different languages, selling everything from black market weapons to stolen star maps. Tall, armored mercenaries walked beside cloaked traders with glowing eyes. In one corner, a brawl broke out between two reptilian aliens, ignored by everyone else. Ryan kept Leora close, scanning every shadow. He knew they were still being hunted, both by human fleet trackers and those alien hunters who had chased them through space. The drift might hide them temporarily, but it also made it easier for enemies to blend in. Tarek led them through a winding path of stalls and corridors. "Where exactly are we going?" Ryan asked, to see someone who knows things. Tarek said, "Her name's Mei Lin. She deals in information. For a price. If anyone can tell you what that shiny little necklace does, it's her." Leora's hand tightened around the pendant, her expression wary. Ryan crouched beside her, lowering his voice. "You trust her?" Leora hesitated, then gave a small nod. "She helped before. Long time ago." That was enough for Ryan, though he still kept one hand near his sidearm. They entered a dim back room, lit only by strands of blue light curling along the walls. A tall, thin alien woman with silver skin and long black hair sat behind a circular table, her many ringed fingers tapping lazily on its surface. When she looked up, her silver eyes seemed to pierce straight through Ryan. "Tarek Voss," she said, her voice smooth but cold. "It's been, 3 years since you owed me a small fortune?" Tarek grinned. "Let's not talk about the past. I've brought you something far more interesting." Malin's gaze shifted to Leora, then to the pendant. Her expression changed instantly, the lazy smirk fading into something sharp. "Where did you get that?" she asked quietly. Ryan stepped forward. "She's been carrying it. People have been trying to kill her for it. I want to know why." Malin stood slowly, moving around the table. "That is not just a pendant," she said. "It's the heart of Vera, a living key. With it, you can access the defense grid of the Veran core worlds, or shut it down entirely." Ryan's stomach tightened. Defense grid. Melon's silver eyes met his. Without it, the Varans are vulnerable. Entire planets could be destroyed before they even fire a shot. If the humans have it. Her voice trailed off. But the implication was clear. The fleet could wipe Leora's people from existence in hours. Ryan looked at Leora, who avoided his gaze. "You knew?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "They take it. My people die. I hide, but they find me anyway." Her voice trembled, and Ryan felt the weight of the choice he had made back on that burning planet. By saving her, he hadn't just defied orders. He had stepped into the middle of a war that could kill billions. Malin leaned closer, lowering her voice. "If you want to protect her, you need to take her home. The heart only responds to someone of her bloodline. But every minute you wait, both sides will get closer before Ryan could respond." The lights in the room flickered. A sharp ping came from Melon's console. Her eyes widened. "Dave?" "Found you," she whispered. Ryan's hand went to his sidearm. "Fleet or the hunters?" Melon's voice was grim. "Both," Tarek cursed. "Then we're out of time. We need to move." Now they pushed back into the crowded market, blending into the sea of faces, but Ryan's instincts screamed at him. He could feel eyes tracking them. In the reflection of a glass panel, he saw 2 human security agents moving through the crowd, scanning faces on the opposite side. 3 tall figures in dark armor, the alien hunters, were pushing through the stalls, their weapons hidden under their cloaks. Ryan pulled Leora closer, whispering, "Stay with me." No matter what happens, the crowd erupted into chaos as the first shot rang out. Merchants screamed. Scattering in every direction, the hunters were firing now, their plasma bolts cutting through the air. The human agents drew stun rifles, but instead of shooting at the hunters, they aimed at Ryan. The fleet wanted him alive, but probably not for long. Tarek grabbed Ryan's arm, docking. "Bay 6. Go." They ran, shoving through the chaos. Leora's small feet barely keeping pace as Ryan half-carried her. Behind them, the hunters and human agents clashed in a storm of weapons fire. No one cared about bystanders. The drift was a place where survival was your own responsibility. They reached the docking bay, but it was too quiet, too empty. Ryan froze, his instinct telling him something was wrong. The air shimmered, and a wall of armed mercenaries stepped out from behind a cargo stack, blocking their path. The one in front smiled. "Captain Hale." "The girl. Both of you are coming with us." Leora's grip tightened on Ryan's sleeve, her voice barely a whisper. "They work for whoever pay most." Ryan scanned the mercenaries, his mind racing. He had just learned the truth about the pendant, and now every single side in this war was closing in. There was no safe path forward, only dangerous ones. The final stand. The air in docking bay 6 was heavy with tension. The mercenaries stood in a half-circle, weapons raised. Their leader, a scarred man with a voice like gravel, staring Ryan down. Behind them, the docking doors were sealed, cutting off the path to Tarek's freighter behind Ryan. The sounds of chaos from the drift market still echoed, the screams, the gunfire, the shouts in a dozen alien languages. Leora clung to Ryan's sleeve, her pendant glowing brighter now, as if sensing danger. He kept her behind him, his stance steady, its eyes scanning the mercenaries for any weak point. "You've got the wrong people," Ryan said evenly, though he knew they didn't. The leader smirked. "No, Captain Hale. We've got exactly the right people. The fleet pays for you alive. The hunters pay more for the girl. And lucky me, I can collect both." Ryan's jaw tightened. "I've got a better offer," he said, and in one quick motion, he pulled a smoke canister from his belt and slammed it to the ground. The bay filled with thick gray clouds, shouts erupting from the mercenaries as they lost visibility. Ryan grabbed Leora's hand and pulled her toward the nearest cargo stack. Blaster fire hissed through the smoke, one bolt grazing the metal just inches from his head. He ducked low, weaving between crates, counting his shots before firing back. The smoke gave him the advantage for a moment, but then a flash of movement. One mercenary had thermal optics, firing directly at him through the haze. Ryan shoved Leora behind a crate as a plasma bolt scorched the wall beside her. She yelped but stayed quiet, her small fingers clutching the pendant like a lifeline. From the other side of the bay, a new sound joined the fight. The sharp, heavy footsteps of armored boots. Ryan risked a glance through the smoke and swore under his breath the alien hunters had arrived. Their curved armor gleaming even in the dim light, their strange rifles humming with lethal energy. Now the bay was chaos. Mercenaries shooting at Ryan, hunters shooting at mercenaries, and, somewhere in the mix, fleet agents forcing their way in through a side access door. Everyone wanted the same two targets, him and the girl. Ryan tapped his comm. "Tarek, I need that ship ready now." Tarek's voice came back, strained. "You're boxed in. I can blow the secondary hatch, but it'll breach. The bay? You've got 30 seconds to be inside." Ryan didn't hesitate. He crouched in front of Leora, meeting her wide, terrified eyes. "When I say run, you run, and don't stop. Understand?" She nodded quickly, though tears glistened in her eyes. He waited until a fresh volley of fire from the hunters forced the mercenaries to dive for cover. "Run!" Ryan shouted, pulling her along the far wall. Staying low, a mercenary spotted them. Raising his weapon, Ryan fired first, dropping him before he could pull the trigger. They weaved between containers, blaster fire chasing them every step. Then came the deep, thunderous boom of Tarek's explosive charge. The far wall of the docking bay split open, venting a rush of air into space before emergency shields slammed down to seal the breach. Tarek's patched-up freighter hovered just outside. The ramp extended. "Go!" Ryan shouted, practically lifting Leora up the ramp. She scrambled inside, turning to look back at him. Ryan fired one last volley to keep the mercenaries and hunters pinned, then sprinted up the ramp himself the moment his boots hit the deck. Tarek slammed the controls, and the freighter shot away from the drift. Engines burning hot. Inside the ship, the air was thick with tension. Tarek didn't look back as he piloted them into the black. "You've got more than half the sector." "After you now," he said, his voice tight. "So where exactly are we going?" Ryan looked at Leora, who still hadn't let go of the pendant. Her breathing was shaky, but her voice was steady. "Home," she said simply. Ryan leaned on the co-pilot's chair. "Then give me the coordinates." She closed her eyes, pressing the pendant to her chest, and the ship's nav console lit up with a set of glowing symbols. Tarek raised an eyebrow. "Never seen a navigation ping like that before." Ryan glanced at him. "That's because it's not human tech, but before." They could jump to light speed. A sharp beeping filled the cockpit. A fleet signal lock. Ryan cursed. "They tagged us, leaving the drift. We've got one shot before they drop an entire cruiser on us." Tarek's grin returned. "Then let's make it count." He yanked the freighter into a steep climb, engines screaming, then dove into the gravity well of a nearby gas giant. The dense clouds and electrical storms would fry most tracking systems and tear the ship apart if they stayed too long. As lightning flashed around them, Ryan strapped Leora into her seat, her small hand reached for his. "You saved me." "Again," she whispered. Ryan squeezed her hand gently. Always outside. The storm swallowed them whole, hiding them from sensors. For now, but Ryan knew the chase wasn't over. The hunters would regroup, the fleet wouldn't stop, and the closer they got to Leora's homeworld, the more dangerous the journey would become. Still, looking at the girl beside him, he knew one thing. No matter how many enemies came after them, He wasn't letting her go. A promise kept the freighter emerged from the swirling clouds of the gas giant, its hull scorched and groaning from the storms. Punishment, but they had done it. No fleet signatures were on the scanner. No alien hunters in pursuit for the first time in days. The stars around them were quiet. Leora leaned against the co-pilot's seat, her eyes fixed on the swirling blue-green planet slowly growing larger in the viewport. Her pendant glowed brighter than Ryan had ever seen, casting soft light over her pale features. "That's it?" Ryan asked quietly. She nodded, her voice hushed. "Home, Tarek." Whistled low. "Never thought I'd live to see it." Heard the Varens sealed their borders after the war. Ships that tried to cross didn't come back. Ryan's gaze stayed on the planet. "They'll let us through." "She's the key," he said, glancing at Leora. But even as he said it, he knew getting close wouldn't be that simple. As they approached, the nav console beeped, a swarm of silver shapes rising from the planet's surface. Varen warships. Sleek, curved vessels bristling with weapons. Their hulls glowing faintly with energy. One broke formation and surged toward them. Weapons armed, a voice, smooth but firm, filled the calm, unidentified vessel. "You are entering restricted space. Turn away or be destroyed." Ryan stepped forward. "This is Captain Ryan Hale of the human fleet. I'm escorting a Varen citizen home. She carries the heart." There was a pause, then a sharp intake of breath from the voice on the other. "And prove it." Ryan looked at Leora, who unfastened the pendant and held it up. It pulsed once, twice, then released a beam of light that projected a swirling crest in the air, a golden, intricate design Ryan had never seen. The warship immediately powered down its weapons. "Proceed. An escort will guide you to the surface," the voice said. Its tone now almost reverent. Tarek muttered under his breath. "Guess she really is royalty." The escort led them to a vast city of white spires and silver domes, stretching out across the coastline of a shimmering sea. The architecture was like nothing Ryan had seen. Elegant, organic shapes that seemed to grow out of the earth itself. They landed on a broad platform surrounded by armored guards in deep blue cloaks, their weapons lowered, but their eyes watchful. A tall figure approached, a woman with the same luminous blue eyes as Leora. Though older, her bearing regal and steady. When she saw Leora, her composure cracked. And she ran forward, dropping to her knees to embrace the girl. "My child," she whispered. Ryan froze, realization hitting him this wasn't just a political heir. Leora was the daughter of the Varen ruler. The woman stood, her gaze shifting to Ryan. "You saved her," she said, her voice heavy with gratitude. "She saved me too," Ryan replied simply. The woman inclined her head. "You have done more than rescue a child. You have preserved the hope of my people." Ryan didn't know how to respond. He just nodded once, stepping back as the guards closed protectively around Leora. Later, inside a high-vaulted hall bathed in golden light, Ryan stood before the Varen Council. The pendant rested on a pedestal between them, its light illuminating the room. The eldest counselor spoke. "You know the humans will come for her. For this? They will not stop until they control the heart of Vera." Ryan's voice was steady. "Then you'd better be ready when they do." The counselor studied him for a long moment, then said, "You cannot stay here. If you do, you will draw the hunters and your fleet straight to us." It was the answer Ryan expected, but it still felt like a weight pressing on his chest. He turned to leave, but a small voice called out behind him, "Ryan?" Leora ran to him, her guards hesitating before letting her through. She threw her arms around his waist, her voice trembling. "You go." Ryan knelt, resting his hands on her shoulders. "I have to," he said softly. Her eyes glistened with tears. "You, my family now," she whispered, echoing the words she had spoken to him in the shuttle. His throat tightened, but he forced a small smile. And you're mine. That's why I have to make sure they never find you again. Tarek was waiting by the freighter when Ryan returned. You sure about this? You could stay here. Nice beaches, no one trying to kill you. Ryan glanced back toward the city, where Leora stood on the platform watching him, her hand raised in farewell. She'll be safe here. That's what matters, he said, stepping aboard as the freighter lifted off. Ryan kept his eyes on the shrinking figure of the girl until the clouds swallowed the city from view. For the first time in years, he wasn't following orders, wasn't carrying out someone else's mission. He had made his own choice, and he'd make it again, 1,000 times, hours later. As the freighter slipped into deep space, Tarek broke the silence. So, what now? Ryan leaned back in his seat, the stars stretching into lines as they jumped to light speed. Now? He said quietly, now we make sure the people who gave that order, the one to leave her behind, never get the chance to give it again. Far away on the surface of Vera, Leora stood by the balcony of her mother's chambers. She looked up at the night sky, the faint streak of the departing freighter just visible among the stars. She touched the pendant now hanging safely around her neck and whispered into the wind, promise kept.